Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. Finally, what I would say, and you're not going to believe this, I thought the most interesting comment that I heard all day came from the least likely of people, and that was new Florida head coach Billy Napier, okay? And if you don't remember, Billy Napier was at Louisiana Lafayette. It's just called University of Louisiana, but, it's in Lafayette. Small town in Louisiana. I actually drove through it when I was at the Final Four, went to meet a friend and drove through Lafayette, Louisiana. Small little town. He's the first-year head coach at Florida, and he said something that I thought was really interesting. Obviously, the big topic is NIL. How do we wrap our arms around it? And it seemed as though every coach kind of had the same thing. We want players to be able to benefit off their name, image, likeness, but how do we kind of do it in the way that it was intended, not where we're just paying players under the table based on their recruiting rankings and all that good stuff. So Billy Napier was asked about it, and I don't know the exact question. I don't know the exact context, but he actually took it in a different direction than anybody else. Let me pause because this is important. Billy Napier, in a conversation about NIL, took it in a direction that I have not heard any coach discuss at all. But what I would also say is this. It speaks very much to something that I said last week. Let's first get to what Billy Napier said about NIL. Here's what he said. He had a lot of different comments, but this was the one that really stood out to me. He was asked about the TV revenue that is created by all of these conferences. Remember, the SEC just signed a new TV deal with ESPN that's going to kick in soon. We're talking $50, $60, $70 million a year per conference in TV revenue. The Big Ten could sign a $1 billion TV contract. And so Billy Napier was asked about this and had an interesting comment. Here's what he said. If you go back to 1990, I did some research the other day. Each SEC institution got like $1.3 million a year from the league. 1990. Just 13 years ago, I think it was $6 or $7 million. I think this 2024 TV deal is in the high 60s, low 70 million per year. I've been in this profession and I've observed the explosion. So he continues, and this is where it's interesting. I think it's foolish to say that the players don't deserve a piece of the pie. I think that if there's no players in these stadiums, they're not showing up to watch. They're certainly not sitting in their home watching it on TV. And so I don't know if you just caught what Billy Napier, the new head coach at Florida, said, but what he said is something very fascinating because, again, all of these coaches are in favor of NIL. They're in favor of a player doing an autograph signing, a player getting a T-shirt deal, whatever, a local car deal. What Billy Napier said was something completely different. Billy Napier talked about the idea of players getting a piece of the TV revenue, which is best I can tell. I mean, it's something that every professional league gets, and certainly no colleges to this point in history have ever gotten. That to me is a huge quote. And I don't think, and again, I go back to what I said last week with Gene Smith, the Ohio State athletic director, when he said that college football should run itself, let all of the other sports fall under the NCAA's umbrella. If Gene Smith hadn't heard that's where it was trending, I don't think he says that. And with Billy Napier, I don't think if he doesn't believe that in the next 10, 15, 20 years, that the players are getting a piece of the TV pie, like basically in his lifetime, in his time as a college football coach. I don't think he says that. And so why this is so interesting is because if this were to happen, and if, by the way, if we have any lawyers that listen to this show and I'm completely wrong on this, please feel free to email me, Aaron Torres, podcastquestions@gmail.com. Please feel free to DM me privately. But what this says to me, the only way that I'm aware of that players can get a piece of the TV money is if they are, if they have to collectively bargain it, which means they have to form a union, which means they have to be employees of the school. Now, I could be 100% wrong on this. And again, legal scholars that listen to this podcast, please feel free to correct me. I don't believe that players could get a piece of the TV revenue unless it's collectively bargained, which means you need a union. To have a union, you need to be employees. And so to me, I think Billy Napier is talking about essentially what I talked about last week. Remember last week I talked about it on this show. I said, look, I don't know where college football is going. I don't know where college sports is going. At that point, I had conversations with somebody in the Pac-12 that's pretty high up in terms of the Pac-12. But what I said was, and I just referenced it a minute ago, it feels as like we could be headed towards a world where college football is still run under the college umbrella, but that it's basically completely different than all of the other sports which would be run under the NCAA umbrella. The idea being that college football at its highest level could set universal guidelines on NIL, universal guidelines on the transfer portal, universal guidelines on tampering, all of the big issues that we don't have answers for right now, but we can't get NIL under control. We can't get tampering under control. We can't stop players from transferring unless we kind of change the fundamental shape of how college football is run. And so Billy Napier's comments, on the heels of Gene Smith's comments about college football running itself, I'm just telling you, this to me was the most important piece of information that came out during the SEC meetings in Destin on Tuesday. The Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban stuff was good. But I believe that is the most important piece. The idea that a head coach is mentioning the ideas of players getting TV revenue. Again, this isn't, we're not talking about players getting, $500 to go sign autographs at Slappy's Sports Bar and Grill. This is a lot different. We're talking hundreds of millions in some cases of dollars split up amongst the players. And it just speaks to me. I don't know how quickly this all happens. But I think the college football that we all know, especially college football, college basketball to a smaller degree, but the college football that we know is going to be completely different in 5-10 years from now than it is now. It's already, right now, it's different than what it was 3, 4, 5 years ago. I can't even imagine what it's looking like in 10 years. But Billy Napier, for the first time, the only other person I've heard say this, Dan Lust, who's an actual lawyer, but Billy Napier sitting here saying, I could see the scenario where players get a cut of the TV revenue. That is completely different. That is being an employee of a school. And that is, to me, the most interesting thing that came out of the coaches' meetings in Destin on Tuesday. Whew. Great opening segment of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. Did AT do it again? Or did AT do it again? What a great segment to open the show. So what I want to do, I want to take a quick break, and I want to switch to hoops. As I said, the NBA draft deadline is